I was for 6 years a devoted husband to Emma, working tirelessly to build what I thought was our dream life together in suburban Chicago. A good job, a beautiful home we picked out together, and plans for starting a family. It all seemed perfect on the surface. Then I started noticing changes. Late nights at work, new passwords on her phone, and a growing emotional distance between us. But it was one text message that shattered everything I believed about our marriage and forced me to redefine my entire life. Let me know where you are watching this from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories about betrayal and the quiet strength it takes to walk away from people who never deserved you in the first place. Growing up in a middle-class family in Illinois, I watched my parents build a rock-solid marriage based on mutual respect and unwavering support. They set the gold standard for what I wanted in my own life someday. Their example showed me that true love meant celebrating successes together and standing firm through hardships. This foundation shaped how I approached relationships, always prioritizing honesty and commitment. I met Emma during our junior year of college. We shared an economics class, and from the moment I saw her confidently answering questions that stumped everyone else, I was captivated. There was something magnetic about her intelligence and the way she carried herself. After weeks of working up the courage, I finally asked her to coffee after class. That first conversation lasted 4 hours, jumping from topic to topic as we discovered countless shared interests and compatible life goals. Our courtship was filled with thoughtful gestures and meaningful moments. I remember staying up all night to help her prepare for a crucial presentation, and how she brought me homemade soup when I caught the flu during finals week. We supported each other through the stresses of graduation and celebrated our achievements together. These experiences created a bond I believed was unbreakable. Emma had this incredible ability to light up any room. People were naturally drawn to her charisma and quick wit. She could make friends with anyone from the barista at our local coffee shop to executives at networking events. I admired her social grace and how she could navigate any situation with confidence. Her career ambitions matched her personality, bold and determined. She talked about becoming a marketing director before 30, and I never doubted she would achieve it. Our wedding was intimate but meaningful. We exchanged vows in a small garden ceremony with just 50 guests, our closest friends and family. Standing before her promising forever, I had never felt more certain about anything in my life. The trust between us felt absolute and sacred. We wrote our own vows, and Emma's words about building a lifetime of memories together still echo in my mind sometimes. As we built our life together, I made numerous sacrifices to support Emma's career advancement. When she received her dream job offer at a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago, I turned down a promising position in Denver to stay with her. The job I took instead was unfulfilling, with a longer commute and lower pay, but I told myself it was temporary. I believed in investing in her success as an investment in our shared future. During the first 2 years of her career, I carried most of our financial burden, while Emma established herself professionally. I postponed my own plans for graduate school, putting my educational aspirations on hold to ensure our financial stability. These weren't decisions I regretted. I made them willingly, believing we were building something meaningful together. Our social life revolved around weekly game nights and weekend gatherings with friends. James was a constant presence in these get-togethers. He and I had been friends since elementary school, sharing decades of memories and milestones. I trusted him completely and considered him family. Emma always seemed to enjoy his company, and I was happy that my wife and best friend got along so well. The house we bought needed substantial renovation, which I tackled mostly by myself on evenings and weekends. I still remember the pride I felt when I finished our kitchen remodel. Emma had been skeptical of my abilities, but the results exceeded even her expectations. We talked about which bedroom would become the nursery someday, planning for the children we hoped to have within the next few years. I took pride in being a good husband, reliable, supportive, and committed to our partnership. My father always told me that marriage required consistent effort, not grand gestures, and I lived by that philosophy. I believed that by showing up every day and putting our relationship first, I was building something that would last a lifetime. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. Emma began making subtle criticisms about my career trajectory, questioning why I was not advancing faster or earning more. What started as constructive feedback evolved into comparisons with other men in our social circle who had more prestigious titles or higher salaries. Her interest in material status symbols intensified, the right neighborhood luxury brands, exclusive social events. When she compared me to her coworker who drove a BMW, while I still had my practical Honda, I laughed it off. When she questioned why I had not pursued management positions more aggressively, I accepted her perspective as motivation to improve myself. I failed to recognize that these comments revealed changing values and growing discontent, seeds of what would eventually destroy our marriage. The shift in our relationship happened so gradually that I struggled to pinpoint exactly when things began changing. Emma started working later, often coming home well after dinner with vague explanations about client meetings or team projects. Her wardrobe underwent a subtle transformation, more expensive, more attention-grabbing. She became intensely protective of her phone, always keeping it face down and taking calls in another room. Initially, I questioned whether my concerns were rooted in insecurity or paranoia. I had always prided myself on being a trusting partner, not the jealous type who monitored his wife's movements or questioned her independence. So, I pushed aside my uneasiness, telling myself I was overreacting to normal changes as we both grew in our careers. Determined to strengthen our connection, I planned surprise date nights, reservations at restaurants she had mentioned, wanting to try tickets to shows she had expressed interest in seeing. Too often these efforts ended in disappointment when Emma canceled at the last minute, citing work emergencies that could not wait. Each cancellation chipped away at my optimism, but I persisted, believing that with enough effort we could recapture what we once had. During a summer barbecue at our house, my friend Tyler pulled me aside with obvious discomfort. He mentioned noticing Emma being overly flirtatious with several male guests, touching their arms during conversation and laughing too enthusiastically at their jokes. When I observed her for the rest of the evening, I saw what he meant, but convinced myself it was just her naturally friendly demeanor being misinterpreted. Emma's criticisms of me became more frequent and cutting. My job was suddenly not ambitious enough. My clothes were too casual, and even my interests were deemed boring. She questioned why I still played basketball weekly with guys who never grew up and suggested I find more sophisticated hobbies that could advance my career. These critiques stung, but I internalized them as areas where I could improve for her. I responded by redoubling my efforts to be the husband she wanted. I joined a gym and started working out regularly, bought new clothes that met her approval, and applied for promotions at work that I was not particularly excited about. Each change was motivated by a desperate desire to save what I felt was slipping away from me: her respect and affection. The first concrete evidence appeared 6 months into this troubling phase of our marriage. Reviewing our joint account statements, I discovered charges from a hotel downtown on a night when Emma had claimed to be at a work conference in Milwaukee. When confronted, she produced a convincing explanation about a last-minute venue change and the company reimbursement that had not processed yet. I wanted so badly to believe her that I accepted this story without verification. As weeks passed, we began sleeping in separate rooms, first occasionally when she came home very late, then regularly under the guise of not wanting to disturb each other's sleep. Our conversations became superficial and brief, focused on household logistics rather than meaningful exchange. The emotional intimacy that had once defined our relationship had evaporated entirely, leaving only the hollow structure of our shared life. My 32nd birthday marked a painful milestone in our deteriorating marriage. I had made dinner reservations at my favorite steakhouse, and Emma had promised to be there on time. She arrived, 40 minutes late, remained distracted throughout dinner, checking her phone constantly, and left before dessert arrived, citing a work emergency that could not wait. I sat alone, finishing my meal in silence, feeling more like a burden than a husband celebrating a birthday. The next morning, while Emma showered, her phone chimed with a message notification. I had never been the type to snoop, but something inside me snapped, a culmination of months of doubt and distance. The message preview on her lock screen read, "Last night was amazing. Cannot wait to see you again. Marc is such a loser compared to you." My hands trembled as I recognized the sender. James, my childhood friend, the person who had stood beside me at my wedding. The betrayal was doubly devastating, not just from my wife, but from someone I had trusted implicitly for most of my life. The physical reaction was immediate, nausea rising in my throat, my vision blurring around the edges, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I managed to return the phone, exactly as I had found it, before Emma emerged from the bathroom. I could not confront them immediately. The shock was too fresh, the pain too raw. Instead, I called in sick to work the next day and followed Emma from a distance, watching as she met James at an upscale restaurant downtown. Through the window, I observed their intimate behavior. The way she touched his hand across the table, the private smiles. They exchanged the comfortable familiarity that spoke of an established relationship. Returning home in a daze, I began searching for additional evidence now that I knew what to look for. I discovered a secret email account left logged in on our shared laptop, containing months of correspondence between them. Hotel receipts for rooms booked during times she had claimed to be working late or attending conferences. Photos they had exchanged that confirmed the physical nature of their relationship. Alone in the house that evening, the full weight of their betrayal crashed over me in waves. I alternated between rage that made me want to destroy everything around me and a grief so profound it left me gasping for breath on the floor of our bedroom. The humiliation of being mocked by the two people I had trusted most created a burning ache in my chest that I thought might never subside. In that moment of crushing revelation, something unexpected happened inside me. Rather than immediately confronting Emma with the evidence or creating a dramatic scene as they might have expected, I made a different choice. I realized that no amount of shouting accusations or revenge would heal what had been broken. Instead, I decided on a different approach, one that required patience and planning. The next morning, I contacted a divorce attorney, explaining my situation and seeking advice on how to proceed strategically. She provided clear guidance on documenting assets, securing financial records, and preparing for a clean break. I listened carefully, taking detailed notes and beginning to formulate a plan that would allow me to exit this marriage with dignity intact. Over the following weeks, I maintained a facade of normalcy while methodically preparing for my departure. I gathered financial documents, photographed valuable possessions, and began transferring my personal items to a storage unit during my lunch breaks. I opened a separate bank account at a different institution and arranged for a portion of my paycheck to be deposited there. This period was emotionally excruciating. Each night lying beside the woman who had betrayed me required extraordinary self-control. There were moments when the urge to confront her nearly overwhelmed me, particularly when she would casually mention James or fabricate stories about her whereabouts. But I reminded myself that my silence was not weakness, it was strategic patience. During this time, Emma grew increasingly bold in her deception, barely making efforts to hide her affair. She would return home late smelling of unfamiliar cologne, with weak explanations I pretended to believe. She would take phone calls from James in the next room, speaking too quietly for me to hear, but loud enough to remind me of her ongoing betrayal. Her behavior suggested she expected me to accept whatever treatment she chose to dish out, that she viewed me as too dependent or too weak to stand up for myself. One evening, we attended a dinner party with several couples from our social circle, including James. Throughout the night, I observed their subtle exchanges, the knowing glances, the inside jokes, the brief touches that would seem innocent to anyone not looking for them. The performance they put on pretending to be merely friends, while I sat oblivious nearby, revealed the depth of their disrespect. A particularly painful discovery came when I overheard a conversation between them in our garage. I had returned home early from a work event and heard their voices as I approached the house. Standing outside the partially open door, I listened as Emma described me as pathetic and easy to manipulate. She laughed while recounting how I had believed her excuses about late nights and business trips, mocking my trust in her. James expressed mild guilt about betraying our friendship, but Emma quickly dismissed his concerns. He has always been too soft, too trusting, she said. That is why he will never be truly successful. Hearing her systematically dismantle my character to the man who had once been my closest friend solidified my resolve to execute my plan. With my exit strategy taking shape, I secured a furnished apartment across town under a new email address and paid 3 months' rent in advance. Over several weeks, I moved essential items and personal mementos I could not bear to lose. Photographs from before I met, Emma family heirlooms, irreplaceable keepsakes. I was careful to only take what was indisputably mine, leaving no obvious gaps that might alert her to my preparations. I meticulously documented our home contents, creating video evidence of all assets and belongings before my departure. My attorney advised this step to prevent any claims that I had taken items that were not rightfully mine. The methodical nature of these preparations helped channel my emotional turmoil into productive action, giving me a sense of control in a situation where I had felt powerless. The final dinner we shared in our home was painfully ironic. Emma criticized my recent work presentation, suggesting ways I could have been more assertive with my ideas. "You need to command respect," she said, unaware that I was about to take the most self-respecting action of my life. I nodded and thanked her for the advice, knowing it was the last time I would sit across from her at our table. That night, as Emma slept peacefully beside me, I remained awake, reflecting on the 6 years we had shared. Despite everything, there was still love mingled with the pain. Love for the person I had believed her to be, for the dreams we had built together, for the life I had committed to wholeheartedly. I allowed myself to experience these feelings one last time, acknowledging them before letting them go. The next morning unfolded according to my careful plan. I waited until Emma left for work, dressed in the expensive suit I had complimented just the previous week. After she drove away, I calmly executed each step I had rehearsed mentally dozens of times. I transferred my portion of our joint accounts to my private account, leaving her share untouched. I packed the last of my personal belongings into my car. On the dining table, I left 3 items: my wedding ring, divorce papers with all evidence of the affair attached, and a simple note that read, "I know everything. I deserve better. Goodbye." I did not engage in lengthy explanations or emotional accusations. The evidence spoke for itself. Before leaving, I took one final walk through the house we had shared, allowing myself to say a private goodbye to the life I had built with such care and optimism. Then I walked out the door, closing it firmly behind me on that chapter of my life. My digital disappearance was equally decisive. I deactivated all social media accounts, changed my phone number, and set up email filters to automatically archive anything from Emma or James. I wanted complete silence. No explanations, no arguments, no opportunities for them to justify their actions or manipulate my emotions further. I sent a brief email to my parents explaining that I needed space, but was safe and would contact them soon. I did not share details of the betrayal, not wanting to burden them with my pain or force them to take sides in a situation that was still raw and evolving. The first week of silence was both the hardest and most clarifying period of my adult life. Staying with my cousin in Michigan, 3 hours from Chicago, I experienced the full spectrum of emotions I had been suppressing. Rage that made my hands shake, grief that woke me sobbing in the middle of the night, and occasionally a surprising sense of liberation that came in quiet moments. My cousin gave me space, but ensured I ate regularly and did not isolate completely. His quiet support provided a safe environment to begin processing what had happened and what would come next. I started seeing a therapist twice weekly, committed to handling this trauma in a healthy way, rather than allowing it to define my future. Through my lawyer, I learned that Emma's response to my disappearance evolved rapidly. Initially, there were angry messages, demanding explanations, and accusing me of immaturity for leaving without discussion. These quickly gave way to confusion as she realized the extent of what I had discovered. Finally came desperate pleas for conversation, promises to end the affair, and claims that what she had with James was meaningless compared to our marriage. Emma's public response revealed much about her character. When unable to reach me privately, she turned to social media with carefully crafted posts, portraying herself as bewildered and concerned, suggesting I had left without warning or reason. Friends who knew nothing of her affair responded with sympathy and support, while those closer to the situation maintained a telling silence. The information that reached me through mutual acquaintances confirmed what I had suspected would happen. Once exposed to the harsh light of reality, the relationship between Emma and James quickly unraveled. The excitement of forbidden romance faded when faced with actual consequences and public scrutiny. James, who had shown little loyalty to our friendship, demonstrated the same character in his relationship with Emma, ending things between them within weeks of my departure. The divorce proceedings moved forward with my lawyer handling all communication. I had provided sufficient evidence of the affair that Emma did not contest the terms, perhaps hoping cooperation would eventually lead to a conversation. I remained resolute in my decision not to engage directly, finding strength in the boundary I had established. My healing journey took unexpected forms. I began journaling extensively, pouring my thoughts onto pages that no one would read, finding clarity in the process of articulating my experience. Physical exercise became a crucial outlet for the residual anger and restlessness I carried. Long runs along unfamiliar streets where no one knew my story, where I could be simply a man moving forward one step at a time. 2 months after leaving Chicago, I accepted a position in Seattle, a city I had always been drawn to, but had never visited. The job aligned perfectly with my long-deferred professional interests, offering creative challenges and growth potential I had sacrificed in my previous role. The physical distance provided a clean psychological break, a fresh landscape unmarked by memories of betrayal. In Seattle, I began building a new social circle with intentional care. I joined a hiking group that explored the stunning natural surroundings each weekend. I volunteered at a literacy program teaching adults to read, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others overcome obstacles. Slowly, I formed connections based on shared interests and values, rather than history or convenience. For 6 months, I maintained complete silence regarding Emma. I did not check her. Social media did not ask mutual friends for updates, did not allow her to occupy space in my healing present. This period of disconnection allowed me to rediscover parts of myself that had been compromised or neglected during our marriage. Interests I had abandoned to accommodate her preferences, opinions I had softened to avoid her criticism, aspirations I had shelved to support her ambitions. Then came an unexpected email from our former neighbor Lisa, someone who had always been kind but not particularly close to either of us. She shared that Emma's life had undergone significant changes since my departure. Her professional reputation had suffered once colleagues learned of her affair with James. The narrative she had tried to control through social media had backfired as the truth gradually emerged through our shared social circles. Lisa mentioned that James had quickly moved on to a relationship with another woman in their office, leaving Emma to face the consequences of their choices alone. According to Lisa, Emma had confided in her during a chance encounter at their local grocery store, expressing profound regret about destroying the best relationship she would ever have. She had apparently realized too late the value of what she had so carelessly discarded. This information stirred complex emotions, but not the satisfaction or vindication I might once have expected to feel. Instead, I found myself reflecting on the impermanence of all relationships and the importance of integrity in how we treat those we claim to love. I chose not to respond to Lisa's email, recognizing that engaging with Emma's story in any way would be a step backward in my healing journey. Through a community service project planting trees in a neglected neighborhood park, I met Alicia, an environmental scientist with a quick laugh and thoughtful perspectives. Our friendship developed naturally over several months of weekend volunteer work, built on genuine interest and respect rather than romantic pressure. We shared stories gradually, each revealing layers of our lives and values as trust established itself between us. When I eventually told Alicia about my marriage and its painful end, I was surprised by how the story had transformed in my telling. No longer defined primarily by betrayal and loss, it had become a chapter of growth and self-discovery. Painful certainly, but also profoundly educational. Alicia listened without judgment. Her response focused not on condemning Emma, but on acknowledging the strength it had taken to walk away with dignity. My approach to this new relationship differed fundamentally from my previous patterns. I established clear boundaries